A broke farm boy dragged her out of a flooding SUV in a Texas storm. He had no idea she was worth $4. $7 billion the storm nobody saw coming, the weather app said. Light showers. It lied. By 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late October, the sky above Beaumont, Texas had turned the color of a bruise, dark purple bleeding into black, and the rain wasn't falling anymore. It was attacking. Caleb Morrow was driving his rusted 2003 Ford pickup back from his third shift of the day. He worked mornings at a grain warehouse, afternoons fixing fences on old Mr. Harlan's property, and some evenings delivering groceries for extra cash. At 24, Caleb had never taken a vacation, never owned a credit card, never eaten at a restaurant that had cloth napkins. He was tired in the kind of way that doesn't go away with sleep. The radio crackled. Flash flood warning issued for Jefferson County. Residents are advised to avoid low-lying roads, and he clicked it off. He'd heard those warnings before. Usually nothing happened, but as he turned onto Miller Creek Road, a shortcut he used every single day, his headlights lit up something that made his stomach drop. A silver minivan, half submerged, driver's door open, water rushing past it like a freight train, and a woman screaming. The door that wouldn't open, Caleb didn't think. He just stopped the truck, left the engine running, and ran straight into the flood. The water hit him like a wall, cold, brown, and violent, full of mud and debris. He was knee-deep within 2 steps, thigh-deep by the time he reached the van. The current tried to drag him sideways. He grabbed onto the van's door frame with both hands and held on. The woman inside was wearing a red dress, dark hair soaked and plastered to her face, eyes wide open with terror. She was pushing on the door from the inside, but the water pressure outside was holding it shut. "Hey, hey, look at me!" Caleb shouted over the roaring water. She looked up. For a second, just 1 second, something shifted in her expression. Fear, yes, but also something else. Recognition, maybe. Like she was deciding whether to trust a stranger in a storm. She nodded. Caleb pulled the door handle and braced his feet into the road below the water. He could barely feel the asphalt. He yanked. The door groaned. Water rushed in around the edges. He yanked again. The hinges screamed. Then the door flew open so fast it knocked him backward. The water poured in. The woman gasped as it hit her legs. Caleb grabbed her arm, her wrist, and pulled. She stumbled forward, half falling out of the van. He caught her around the waist. Her red dress was immediately soaked to nothing, weightless and heavy at the same time. He dragged her toward the shoulder of the road. The van shuddered behind them. Then it shifted, slowly, terrifyingly, and began sliding downstream. Neither of them looked back. Chapter 3. The side of the road. They collapsed on a gravel patch at the edge of the road. Caleb was on his hands and knees, coughing. The woman sat with her knees pulled up, shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. He grabbed a blanket from his truck, an old Carhartt one he used when he napped on lunch breaks, and threw it around her shoulders without asking. "You okay?" he said between breaths. She stared at him. "Ma'am, are you hurt? Did you hit your head?" She blinked, slowly. "No," she said. Her voice was calm, almost unnervingly so, for someone who had just nearly drowned in a minivan. "I'm not hurt. I couldn't get the door open. Water pressure," Caleb said. "Once the water gets high enough, you can't push it open from inside. You need to break a window or wait until the water inside equals the water outside." She stared at him again. "How do you know that?" "My dad drowned in his truck when I was 11, Caleb said simply. "I looked it up after." Silence. The rain hammered the truck roof above them. Lightning cracked somewhere far off. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "about your father." Caleb shrugged the way people do when they've made peace with a thing, but it still costs them something to talk about it. "Long time ago." He glanced over at her. "You got someone I can call? Family? Anyone nearby?" She hesitated. Just a half second. "My assistant," she said. "But my phone's in the van." Caleb handed her his. Cracked screen, no case, 14% battery. She looked at it like she'd never seen a phone that beaten up before in her life, but she took it. And she dialed. Chapter 4. Who she really was, he found out 3 days later. He wasn't going to. He hadn't asked her name. She hadn't offered it. When her people arrived, 2 black SUVs, 4 men in suits, 1 woman with a tablet. They had been polite but quick. One of them handed Caleb a card that said, "Thank you for your assistance. Please contact us regarding any compensation." Caleb had stuffed it in his glove box and forgotten about it, until his co-worker Darnell showed him a news article on his phone during lunch. Victoria Crane, CEO of Crane Consolidated Industries, narrowly escapes flash flood in rural Texas. Billionaire credits local man with saving her life. Caleb stared at the photo. The woman in the red dress, except now she was in a boardroom somewhere wearing a jacket, holding a coffee cup, looking like she owned the room, which apparently she did. Net worth estimated $4, $7 billion. Caleb put down his sandwich. "That's the lady you pulled out the flood?" Darnell said. "Apparently," Caleb said. "Man," Darnell shook his head slowly. "You saved a billionaire and didn't even get her number." Chapter 5. The call he almost didn't answer. The number that called him 2 days later was a Houston area code. He almost let it go to voicemail. He got scam calls on Houston numbers all the time, but something made him answer. "Mr. Morrow." The voice was professional, female, efficient. "It is Sandra Otieno. I'm the Chief of Staff for Victoria Crane. Ms. Crane would like to meet with you in person, at your convenience, to personally express her gratitude." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Is this about the compensation card?" he said. "Partially," Sandra said. "But Ms. Crane wanted to be clear that she'd like to speak with you directly, not through lawyers, not through a check. She wants to meet the man who saved her life." Caleb looked around his apartment, water stain on the ceiling, 2 chairs at the kitchen table, one of which wobbled. A photo of his mom on the wall, smiling in front of a garden she no longer had. "Okay," he said. "When?" Chapter 6. The meeting. He wore his cleanest flannel. He drove 2 hours to Houston, parked his truck among a sea of luxury vehicles, and walked into a building with a lobby that was bigger than his entire apartment complex. Victoria Crane was waiting for him on the 34th floor. Not in a boardroom. In a small conference room with windows overlooking the city, 2 cups of coffee already poured, and no one else in the room. She stood when he walked in. She was different here. Same face, same dark eyes. But the terror from the flood was gone. She looked composed, powerful. The red dress had been replaced by a navy blazer and slacks. Her hair was pinned back, but when she extended her hand, it was the same hand he'd pulled out of that van. "Mr. Morrow," she said, "thank you for coming." "Caleb," he said, "and I almost didn't." She smiled slightly. "I know, Sandra said you hesitated. I thought it was a scam call." "Given your phone screen," she said, "I'm not surprised you're cautious with incoming calls." He laughed. He hadn't expected to. They sat down. She slid one of the coffees toward him. "I want to be straight with you," Victoria said, folding her hands on the table. "I've been in business for 20 years. I can read people. And when I looked at you from inside that van, soaking wet, ankle-deep in floodwater, yanking on a door that probably weighed twice what it should, I saw something I don't see very often." "What's that?" Caleb said. "Someone who wasn't calculating anything," she said. "You weren't thinking about who I was. You just helped." Caleb shrugged. "My dad didn't have anyone to help him." Victoria nodded slowly. "Sandra told me about the article you found. You know who I am now." "Yeah. And you still came with no lawyer, no list of demands." "I don't have a lawyer," Caleb said. "And I didn't pull you out of a flood to make demands." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she opened a folder on the table. "I want to offer you something," she said. "Not a check, not a token, something real." She slid a document across the table. "I've been trying to expand our agricultural supply division for 2 years. We keep hitting walls because we don't have people who actually understand farm operations from the ground up. Not MBA graduates. Ground up. I want to bring you on as a regional operations consultant, full salary, training, housing allowance for Houston if you want it." She paused. "You can say no. This is not a charity offer. I've had my team check your references from the warehouse and from Mr. Harlan's property. They said you're the most dependable worker they've had in years." Caleb looked at the document. He didn't understand half the words on it, but he understood the number. He set it face down. "Why are you really doing this?" he said. Victoria looked at him steadily. "Because I almost died," she said. "And not in a dramatic way, in a completely preventable way, on a back road in Texas. Because I thought I could drive through standing water and I couldn't get a door open." She paused. "And when I was sitting in that van watching the water rise, I remember thinking, I have $4.7 billion and I cannot open a car door." She looked out the window. "You opened it." Came after Caleb took the job. Not right away. He took the document home, had a paralegal at the local library look it over, asked 3 questions, and called Sandra back 6 days later. He started training in January. He moved to Houston in February. He wore the flannel to his first day and nobody said anything, mostly because Victoria had told Sandra to tell the team not to say anything. He was good at it, not because of some hidden talent or movie-style transformation, but because he knew what it felt like when a system failed the people at the bottom. He knew which corners got cut, which reports got fudged, which suppliers were reliable and which ones weren't. He knew because he'd been on those docks and in those fields. And slowly, steadily, things changed. Not in a dramatic way, in the way that real things change, quietly, through daily work, through showing up, through being someone people could trust. Epilogue. Miller Creek Road. 8 months later, Caleb drove back through Beaumont. Not for work, just to drive. He turned onto Miller Creek Road. The road was dry now. A guardrail had been installed near the flood crossing. A small sign, "Do not enter when flooded." He pulled over and sat for a moment. He thought about his dad, about a truck in rising water, and no one on the road. He thought about a woman in a red dress who had $4.7 billion and couldn't open a door. He thought about how the smallest moments, a wrong turn, a cracked phone screen, a Carhartt blanket, can reroute an entire life. Then he drove back to Houston. He had work in the morning.